Welcome to Scary Stories, Real or Written. Each of the following tales could be true or completely made up. Can you tell which is which? Let's begin. Every town has its ghost stories and urban legends that people love bringing up during spooky season, and my town's personal favorite story involved the Dark Carnival. It used to sit right off Route 9 behind a stretch of pine trees near Blackbeard's Cave. For the longest time, it was a haunted attraction. Rides, tents, sideshows, everything. But one Halloween night, several years ago, a fire swept through the place. The official report said it was an accident. Others who were there, however, said it wasn't. The flames burned for hours, and by morning, the carnival was gone. The ringmaster, the man who ran it, was never found. Most people assumed he escaped and just went on about his life quietly. Others say he died in the fire that he most likely started, and his spirit still lingers. Regardless, since then, people say that when the October wind comes in from the bay, you can hear carnival music playing through the trees. Last Halloween, my friends and I decided to find it and explore. We parked where the old sign used to be. The metal posts were still there, rusted and bent. It was quiet. Too quiet. Even the crickets had gone silent. Then, somewhere deep in the woods, I heard the sound of a calliope playing a faint and warped off-key tune. The gates were rusted, swinging slightly as I pushed them open. The air smelt of damp metal and decaying wood. I walked toward the middle of the carnival, and the sight stole my breath. The Ferris wheel leaned like a skeletal giant, its gondolas swaying in the wind. The carousel's paint was chipped, the horses frozen mid-gallop, yet somehow the platform was slowly rotating. I glanced at my friends. Their smiles were nervous, forced. We had a joke about the ghost stories associated with this place, but now, with actually being here, the real-life possibility wasn't so funny. The old ticket booth had its glass shattered, and inside, I thought I saw a shadowy figure run across. My heart skipped a beat, and I swallowed hard, trying to laugh it off. Trying to remind myself, it's Halloween, we're here literally to be spooked, and at least I'm not alone. The further we went, the stranger it got. I wandered into the funhouse first. Its sign was barely legible, just the word fun scorched halfway off. The door was gone, but when I stepped inside, I noticed the mirrors were still there, but they were all warped and cracked. My reflection split into a dozen versions, but one of them didn't move when I did. It tilted its head just slightly. I realized that one wasn't my reflection at all, nor was it any of my friends, and that I had no idea who or what it was. I stumbled back, momentarily forgetting how to breathe. Then, faintly from outside, the carousel started moving again. The horses creaked, the platform rotated slowly, and that same broken melody began to play. But there was no wind now, and no one touching it. No reason for it to be moving. I turned toward the Ferris wheel. For just a moment, I saw something. A figure standing in one of the gondolas, too still, too solid, bathed in pale moonlight. My flashlight flickered violently, and the faint organ music stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Suddenly, I found myself not trusting a single shadow. The hair on my arms stood on end. Then I heard laughter, low, distant, echoing around the empty grounds. Terror gripped my soul when I realized that laughter wasn't coming from any of my friends. It was children's laughter, mixed with something else, something older, and it felt like a mocking type of laugh. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed it, but curiosity, that same curiosity that brought me here, rooted me to the spot for a few terrifying seconds longer. The figure appeared again, just at the edge of my flashlight's beam. I could feel its gaze. My heart hammered in my chest. I bolted and yelled at my friends that I think it's time to get the heck out of here. My friends followed my lead, 0 questions asked. The ground was uneven, and one of my friends accidentally found a small hole and got tripped up for a second, but quickly regained his composure and kept hauling ass with the rest of us. Behind us, the creaks, the distant laughter, the faint organ music, all seemed to chase us. Finally, we burst through the gates, the cold night air hitting us like a wall. My flashlight shook in my hands, flickering as we ran down the foggy road. The carnival loomed behind us, silent once more, but I knew in my soul it had been waiting for who knows how long to remind just the right group of people it was still alive. As we drove back toward town, I could still feel its presence on my shoulders, like a chill that refused to leave. Until tonight, Halloween had always been about the costumes, parties, and candy, but that night taught me something new. Some places don't just cease to exist after being abandoned and left behind to nature's will. They watch, they wait, and when the right moment presents itself, they make sure you feel it. I had no plans for Halloween, no friends in town, no parties to go to, just me and an empty apartment. I wanted something different, something fun, maybe a little on the spooky side. So, I did what any reasonably bored person might do. I booked a night at one of Gettysburg's supposedly haunted inns. The sun was setting as I drove into town, the autumn air scented with fallen leaves. Houses along the main street were decorated with fake cobwebs and plastic skeletons, lights flickering and carved pumpkins. I felt a strange mix of excitement and unease. This was Halloween night, but the real history of Gettysburg was everywhere. The echo of past lives, the weight of stories, the remnants of a battle that had scarred this land. The inn came into view as I turned down a narrow, tree-lined road. It was older than anything else in town, built of brick and wood, with a wraparound porch that sagged slightly in the middle. The paint was peeling, and the windows reflected the dying light in a way that made it seem darker than it really was. I parked my car and stared at it for a moment, feeling the thrill of my wild spur-of-the-moment decision to come here. I was about to spend the night alone in a building people claimed was haunted, and I couldn't wait. The front door creaked as I pushed it open. The lobby smelt faintly of wood polish, dust, and something else I couldn't place, but it smelled cold, if that makes any sense. My suitcase thumped softly against the floor as I dragged it toward the registration desk. No one was there. I assumed the innkeeper had stepped out for a break or something. On a whim, I left my name in the guest book, flipped to a page where previous visitors had scrawled comments like, "So much for a good night's sleep," and "I came here alone, but I definitely wasn't alone." I set my bag down in the hallway and decided to explore before settling into my room. The inn had high ceilings, fancy chandeliers coated in a thin layer of dust, and hallways lined with old portraits. I glanced at one of the paintings, a stern man in Civil War uniform, and suddenly felt like I was being watched. I looked around, and of course, I was alone. So I ignored the feeling. I then wandered into the dining room. The fireplace hadn't been used in a good while, it seemed. Chairs were tucked neatly under tables, but I noticed one rocking gently back and forth. I paused, heart thumping, and waited. The movement stopped. I laughed at myself. Here I am, spending Halloween alone, in a haunted inn, letting my imagination run rampant, and therefore spooking myself over a draft moving a chair. Surely that's all it was, a draft. I made my way upstairs to my room, the staircase creaking and groaning under my weight. More portraits lined the staircase walls, women in dresses from another century, children staring around sadly, their eyes seeming to follow me. They creeped me out, but I kept moving. The room itself was small but comfortable enough. A 4-poster bed, a writing desk, and a window that overlooked the wooded path that I'd driven in on. After unpacking, I decided to sit by the window with a book, telling myself it was safer to read than let my imagination run too far. The sky outside had turned a deep purplish blue, and the wind rustled through the partly bare trees, knocking off more leaves as it did so. I turned a page, then froze. From somewhere outside my room, faint footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed across the hardwood floors. I told myself it was probably the front desk person returning, because otherwise the inn was empty. Yet I couldn't ignore the sound of someone walking down this upstairs hallway. Why would the front desk person need to come up to the second floor? I set my book aside and listened. The steps stopped outside my door. My pulse accelerated. Slowly, I got up and opened the door. Nothing. Just the empty hallway stretching in both directions. Silent now, except for the whisper of the wind through the trees. I returned to my room, trying to laugh off my fear, when I noticed something odd. On the desk, my pen had rolled slightly, as though nudged by an unseen hand. I froze. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Uneven surface, maybe? Who knows? It seemed very level, but things happen, I guess. I sat back down, picked up my book again, and eventually forgot about it. After a couple of hours of reading, I decided it was time to try and get some sleep. But hours passed, and I absolutely could not sleep. I tried to, but every little sound, a floorboard creaking, a distant moan of the house settling, the flutter of the curtains in front of the old window, made my nerves snap tight. Around midnight, I finally gave up attempting sleep and decided to just check my immediate surrounding area for the sake of my sanity. I got out of bed and walked to the window. The path leading to the front door was empty and dark except for the moonlight. Satisfied with finding nothing amiss in that direction, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the hallway. My hand trembled as I pointed the beam toward the stairs. And then I heard it, whispering, soft but urgent, right from the top of the stairs. I froze. My rational mind screamed at me to go back to my room and mind my business, but my feet moved toward the stairs anyway. I creeped down the hall toward the stairs slowly, the old wood floors refusing to allow me to walk quietly. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, circling me as if the walls themselves were speaking. I could not, however, make out any clear words. Then I saw him, a fully formed man in a Civil War uniform, standing in the middle of the hall. The uniform was faded, torn at the seams, his face pale and hollow, eyes fixed on me. My breath caught. I couldn't move. A chill flooded my body, cold enough that I felt my bones ache. And then the air shifted. A sudden gust slammed a couple of previously open doors in the hallway shut, and the chandelier above swayed violently. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own 2 feet. My flashlight flickered and went out. In that moment of darkness, I felt him step closer, the pressure of his presence against me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, only that he was there, real and waiting. I smacked the flashlight a couple times, and it came back on, but when the light returned, he was gone. I didn't care to investigate further. I ran back to my room and grabbed my bag, threw myself down the stairs, tore through the lobby, out the front door, and into the cold night. I didn't stop until I reached my car, heart hammering, lungs burning. I drove away, never looking back. I told myself it was a trick of my imagination. I told myself the history of the inn, the old stories of soldiers who died and spirits who lingered, had filled my mind with fear. But I know what I felt. I know what I saw. Next time I have nothing to do on Halloween, I think I'll just stay the night in my own house. So, let's see how you did tonight. Let's talk about our first story, the abandoned carnival, who might actually not have been as abandoned as it was rumored to be. That story was mostly written for your entertainment, but there was something called the Dark Carnival in Bayville, New Jersey, that took place every year. It just wasn't burned down. But Blackbeard's Cave, where this Dark Carnival was held, was an amusement park abandoned after the COVID-19 pandemic. As of 2022, it was demolished entirely. So, while it was mostly written, there are also some elements of truth in there. So, on to our next story, The Haunted Inn in Gettysburg, where the narrator came for the purpose of being spooked and then hurriedly left after actually being spooked. That story was also mostly written, but there are definitely some very popular haunted inns in Gettysburg, such as Farnsworth Inn, Cashworth Inn, and Gettysburg Hotel, all of which are very well known for being extremely haunted. So, how did you do? Let me know in the comments if you guessed correctly, or why you guessed what you did, and feel free to leave ideas for future episodes if you wish. If you would like to submit a story to be used in a future episode, look for the Google form link in either the channel description or video description. I look forward to hearing from you and reading your stories, and I hope you look forward to hearing from me again next week.